Well, thank you all for coming out this evening. I could just continue to applaud Margaret because hers is really an amazing story in terms of it being very illustrative about the issue of human trafficking. And I hope that you picked up on some of the elements of what she was talking about in terms of her experience. She's talking about basically being deceived. And she is talking about filial trafficking. It's estimated that 30% of all traffickers are family members. And so it's not such a foreign concept that somebody within an own family structure could be a part of the sale of a human being. But there's also an element there that you might have overlooked, which is the preying on hope. A lot of times traffickers will prey on the fact that somebody has a dream or somebody has a hope. And in her country in particular, one of the prizes that's held out in her culture is an American education. And they'll do anything to get an American education for their children. And so her aunts used that as a ploy. I promise education to this child. And so you can understand where that was really held up as something that to be valued, which is not unlike what we have when we have the pimps trolling around in the mall saying that you're beautiful and you could be a fashion model, or that I can make you famous in Hollywood, or whatever the lies are, really preys on the human heart and the dreams that we have. But then also the elements of withholding her identification, the isolation, the beating, the deprivation of food, the conditions in which she was forced to live, the no money for the work that she was forced to do. I think one of the things that you might have wonder about in a case like this is, well, isn't that all sort of happening within a family, and isn't that sort of a domestic, maybe violence or child abuse type of situation? Remember, she was paid for. She was paid for when she and 34 other children were brought to the airport and then literally sold at the airport. I don't even think you can imagine what that picture must have looked like. And she was constantly being reminded of that. And so the element here that we're talking about is not only preying on the aspirations of what she had, but holding a sense of terror over her at all times. One of the things that I learned that was frankly unknown to me as an American citizen, but put poignantly by a group of South African women, they said, what you don't understand in America is that the INS is as feared by a foreigner than as the IRS is to us. So if somebody says the IRS has your name and they're coming after you, we freak out, right? Irrational fear, sweating for no reason, right? It's that same kind of, I don't know what this means. So if you've always been in the United States, that may be a hard concept for you to grasp. But the whole idea of holding deportation over your head at any time is a constant stream of terror. But I think what's amazing about Margaret and the other women that we have an opportunity to work with is the incredible resilience. Now, we don't have time for you to hear the rest of her story, and we don't have enough Kleenex for you to hear the rest of her story, but I think what is admirable about the victims we get to service are their endless reservoir of hope to keep getting up and trust people again after so many people have betrayed them and after so many people have abused and exploited them, to still get up the next day and say, maybe the next person will be a good person in their life. And I find that absolutely remarkable, and it's sort of a reservoir I just want to tap into. So I'll tell you, because I think it's helpful for all of us to know how do you get involved type of thing. For me personally, it was doing street outreach in Baltimore and having an opportunity to work with the women who were involved in street prostitution. And that was a ministry that was going on for about 5 years. I had only been involved for a couple of years. After a while, I started to really understand and listen, perhaps for the first time, about their stories. And I regret to say that I was probably one of those persons that had the same sort of stereotype of, oh, that's a prostitute, as if that's a class of person, and we just create that as an identity. But as you begin to peel the layers off of somebody's life, you begin to realize, oh my goodness, she went to grade school and she wanted to be a ballerina, and she has Tinkerbell in her room where she grew up, and she likes macaroni and cheese, and oh my goodness, she's like normal, right? And then something went terribly wrong. Either a terribly wrong person came into her life, or a wrong decision came into her life, but something went terribly wrong. And so what I have learned over time is that most of the women, contrast to the 10% or 30% in my experience, I would say up to 90% of the women that we interact with have been in a trafficking situation at some point. And they may go in and out of a pimp-controlled prostitution situation. They may have gone in and out of a relationship that fits the definition of trafficking. And so we have to be very careful when we encounter individuals who we want to put in that stereotypic box and say, oh, they're that, because you're only seeing them at one point in time. And you're not seeing all that predicated that particular story. So just like you might meet Margaret out there over a brownie and kind of say, gosh, she's just so lighthearted and funny, and she's got a great sense of humor and all of that, but you have no idea what's back behind the layers, just like I can't even anticipate what is behind any one of the people sitting in this room and what kind of story you might have to share. So that's what really broke my heart as I began to realize that most of the women with whom we have service are women who have been in a controlled situation, either controlled by virtue of their circumstances of poverty and drugs and a lot of things that Amanda was talking about, or the more straight-out definition of girls who have been trafficked up and down the eastern seaboard and then just dumped off in Baltimore, because Baltimore is a real easy place to hide somebody. Okay? Because if you just throw them in amongst everybody else, who's going to notice? And so we have a fair number of girls who have had experiences going all the way from New York down to Miami and back again, Atlantic City, New Jersey, etc., and all under controlled situations. And then once they become, you know, Ed puts it aptly, once that product is no longer of use or he's gotten market value out of her, dump her off and move on to the next one. And so that's really been my experience, and realizing the incredible injustice associated with that mobilized us to do the work that we're doing now, which is now the 30-second commercial about the Samaritan women. I know some of you have been out to our organization to volunteer. Thank you very much. You're all welcome to come. And we actually have a large estate in Southwest Baltimore that we have acquired and renovated to serve as a restoration home for adult victims of human trafficking. We are focusing on women of significant trauma and helping them get their lives back together through academic, vocational, spiritual, and social development. It is with much chagrin and actually sadness that I will tell you that this is the first restoration home in Maryland. And so we are woefully under-resourced within the state. There's nothing in Delaware. I got a call yesterday from folks in DC saying they have no place to take the girls that they have. I got a call last week from Delaware saying that there were 2 men that had been trafficked that had fled their captors and needed a place to stay. And so there really is a very desperate landscape out there of care facilities for this type of victim. So one of my encouragements to you is if this is an issue that pricks your heart in a way that you want to get more involved, hint, hint, that there is plenty of room to get involved on this issue. We're also working with the Maryland Coalition, which is part of what's hosting these rallies, but we are trying to work with the task force and work with other NGOs to raise awareness about this particular issue so that more services can be created and so we can have more strident laws and so you can be better informed in terms of the vigilance and the opportunity you have to do victim identification and reporting. So I'll just conclude with a couple of constructive remarks about ways that you could get involved, because sometimes when you read the statistics, if you go to like the CNN Freedom Project and you see, oh, 27 million people in the world, what am I going to do, right? 300,000 potential victims in the United States. What am I going to do? Well, there is a tremendous amount that you can do, even from your position as a student, and I would say even especially. The one on my heart is that you would get involved academically. We absolutely have a love fest with Danielle, who is a Hopkins student, and she's on her, what, 4th semester with us? She's brilliant at working the system in Hopkins if you need help with that. You can edit that out of the film later. But she has been able to parlay her internship with us into an independent study and into an ongoing study of this particular issue. And it's really, I will speak for you and say, it seems as though it's sort of changed your trajectory permanently. And there's a lot of work to get involved academically. There's certainly a lot on the law side that still needs to be studied. There's a great deal on how we handle victims. Any one of you who wants to take up the perpetrator issue and take up the issue of Johns and what we are not doing in that area, we need intellectual capital around that issue. And so please take that up as a paper. You'll probably surprise your faculty and they'll probably ask you to do more. At least that's our hope. Internship is certainly an option. There are a few organizations in this area like Turnaround, Safe House of Hope, that would welcome interns participating in everything from street outreach to working directly with victims. There's a lot of ways to plug in, and so please do that. You'll meet more of those people as the rally goes on. In terms of advocacy, there's a lot that you can do, not only in terms of voting, but certainly influencing voting, influencing the lawmakers. You can go to change.org. You can just download the Free to Work app on your phone and make sure every time you walk around in the shopping mall, you're scanning the barcodes to see whether or not there's any labor trafficking allegations against the products that you intend to buy. You can make conscientious decisions about what you buy, whether it's fair trade, or even in your gift giving, focus on the products that are made by victims, because that's helping to create a revenue stream for them that is positive and affirming and giving them a chance at a new economic outlook on their life. And then certainly the ways that you can change your own behavior. You know, there's some pretty crappy ways that we talk that normalize this behavior. So when we say things like pimp in our ride or pimp in our dorm room, we're actually helping to contribute to a culture that says, that's kind of funny. It's cute, it's clever. We'd like 5-year-olds to run around in the Walmart and pick out the pimp costume, because that's cute. But I think anybody who has been affected by this particular crime will tell you there is nothing short of heinous, and that's pretty much the only adjective that you should use with that. So the ways in which you speak, the ways in which you tolerate particular behaviors. If you go into a store and you see something offensive, don't just walk out, tell somebody. Okay? If you are in an establishment and you see something that looks suspect, you should be taking down the human trafficking hotline number in your phones. Oh, now would be a good time. Take out your phone. One 888-3737 888. What? 1-888-3737 888. It's not in the right order. You'll figure it out. You're in college. So that is an anonymous 24-hour national tip line. So if you see something like the restaurant that has the windows all boarded up, that has a video camera and you have to be buzzed in and that looks a little odd, or the nail salon where only men are going in and out, or anything like that that looks peculiar, or the smarmy people trolling the mall, approaching young girls, whatever it is that you see when your gut, your instinct says, something's not right here, I'm going to ask you to really trust your gut. And there is no harm and no foul in being wrong. But there is a tremendous and potentially egregious error in reading it right and doing nothing. So I want to just be an encouragement to you that there is a tremendous number of ways that you can get involved in this particular issue. Being here tonight was probably your first best step, and then I would encourage you to invite others to participate in the rest of the rallies that you have going on this week. Thank you.